What I would like to do now is to give you a kind of insight into the workshop that the project Pathways is right now. So, as Joyce showed you yesterday, the idea of Pathways is really to analyze sustainability transitions from three different angles, from three different approaches, which is integrated assessment modeling, socio-technical analysis through the MLP, and transitions in the making, initiative-based learning. So a lot of what we saw today and yesterday, looking at initiatives on the ground. And the next idea is what happens if you take a joint view. So if you integrate the different findings from the different approaches. And basically that's the state we are in right now, trying to merge the approaches, trying to merge the findings. And it's also the main goal of the project. However, what we found pretty soon when we started to do this work and we started to communicate each other is that the languages and the ideas and the methods behind these different approaches are so different, and so that we found it very hard at times to understand each other. Sometimes we even had to find new ways of communication or new ways of framing things, because what a modeler understands under a certain word may be something entirely different to someone in the MLP analysis or in analyzing initiatives. So when we started off with the rather bold idea to really integrate the different approaches, what we found is that at least at this point in time, this is not really possible. So what you cannot do is say, the MLP analysis cannot tell the modeler that his coefficient should really not be 2.2, but it should be 2.3 or 2.3.5, because that doesn't come off the data here, and it also doesn't come out of the data there. And it's also that the modeler cannot tell anyone here, if the agent just, put into 2.3 more effort into that kind of thing, then we really meet the 2-degree target. So what we had to do was to find a concept that is a more humble approach. So we actually had to find ways of learning and talking to each other. And our colleagues came up with a concept for that, and it's basically based upon an iterative process between aligning between the approaches, which is to identify more specifically the joint. Identify more specifically the joint elements around which an integrated meta-perspective may emerge. So if the different approaches talk to each other, what comes out of that? How can we frame a common picture from what we find? And then the other way is to see if you have a common topic, like governance, what do the different approaches tell? So what does integrated assessment modeling have to tell about governance? What does the MLP have to tell about governance on a certain issue? What do initiatives and the learning from looking at initiatives have to tell about governance on a specific issue? And the hypothesis is that if you go through these stages and you go through that iteratively, you may actually come up with a construction of a common idea, of a common integrated picture sooner or later. Now that's basically in a way where we are. And the analysis for the single approaches have been performed to a larger degree. So the next step is to really take this data and make it talk to each other. And we, so to say, as an experiment, as a first try, we did this for the land use domain in the Netherlands, which is 1 unit of analysis in our project. So, I hope you can read this. If you do quantitative systems modeling, integrated assessment modeling on multifunctional land use, there's the idea to use land in more than one way. So it's not just for farming, it's not just nature protection, but you interweave these approaches and you try to use land for more than one purpose. What you find out if you model this approach is that you can really have an impact on biodiversity, so positive impact on biodiversity under certain circumstances, and you can also have a positive impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So from that perspective, at least we know that the idea of multifunctional land use as a sustainable approach in land use could be something to look at, and it can, under certain circumstances, yield positive results. So that is one stream. The socio-technical analysis, the MLP perspective, on the other hand, then shows you more about the context of what's going around in land use in the Netherlands. So what was done was the classical analysis of the 3 levels: landscape, regime, and niches. When you look at the landscape, what you find out is that you have this kind of change that comes from climate change, that you have certain political influences. You have 2 regimes that we studied. One is nature, the other is agriculture, and you find that agriculture is very much locked in, strong forces that keep the regime together, and due to effects like climate change, nature is not so stable, so it's mildly locked in. And we also looked at a niche that might change the regime and might work to actually come up with a new, more sustainable way of using the land, and that's agricultural land use, which basically means you combine agriculture and nature protection into one, so that you arrive at a more sustainable way of farming, and that also works well on biodiversity. And we could see that this has a moderate momentum, so there is something going on, and there is change going on. And then we have initiative-based learning, so we looked at what's going on the ground, and we looked at one specific case of a collective that comes from bird protection, really, but then eventually became a collective of farmers working towards new ways of using their produce and selling it, and which then eventually became like a think tank and a group to talk to from the side of the government in order to enforce change or conduct governmental tasks. So that was really quick, sorry. But so what happens if you compare the data and if you make it look at each other? So what do the individual approaches have to tell each other? So if I start with the initiatives, and you look, what do they tell to the MLP? Then you can see that as innovative niches, they are kind of prefigurations. So ideally, they would give you an idea of a future regime, of a different constellation that is more sustainable. On the other hand, the MLP provides a lot of understanding for the initiative as it shows the context and what's really going on and what the initiative is struggling against. If you take the relationship between quantitative systems modeling and initiative-based learning, then you find that on the one hand, the initiatives provide narratives to the modelers. Yes, I know. So thank you. So what's happening is that the modelers can learn about what's really going on and how to frame the models. And you can also judge the feasibility of the model result, because you can say, is this realistic? Are your assumptions realistic? Does it match to what we find? So for example, is the process linear, or do we see a very different, maybe exponential process? On the other hand, the models provide a context really to the initiatives. Because what the models put out very much makes people think about what's going on there and how they can work on it. Think of things like the 2-degree target. That's how people start to really think, okay, what's going on? How can we work on that? What can we do? And again, we have a similar connection between socio-technical analysis and quantitative modeling. So there are implications about changes that are going on, about regimes that are changing. And they again provide insight into are the models predicting correctly? Is what the models say actually going on there? Can we see that in the more aggregated view of socio-technical analysis? And on the other hand, it's the same way around. Is what's going on, if you model this, if you put this into the models, is that really something that is having an impact? Or do we need a different approach? Do we need different niches or a different picture for a new regime so that we really arrive at a sustainable situation? So, in the very nick of time, a broader overview about the chances and also the restrictions of, well, making 3 very different approaches talk to each other. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for discussions.
Thanks. Thanks for the outline. I will have more comments later on, but one question which came into my mind in the beginning when I also read the backup paper, the integrated assessment model. You used some results of image, and I assume that your modeling team in the project is running the model as well for the public.
Yeah.
What is this spatial scale of the model? Did you model specifically the Dutch sector, or did you infer from results from European results or global results back to the Netherlands?
There's actually 4 or 5 different models that are being used, and I think from my memory the model that was used here has the global and the regional scale. So Joyce is saying yes. she's more informed. So yes, we have the opportunity to model on different regional or global scales, different scales.
What is regional in this case?
It to my information, it refers to the country.
I think that's not true, actually. I think image has. I think I don't know the model intimately, but I think it has regions like Western Europe.
Yeah, but it's 4 or 5 different models, and I have to. Andries is missing, so our modeler is not here.
Okay, but if it's image based, the
well, we will look into that.
Level.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I like a lot the presentation, and I see the strength of having different lenses of analysis and different shovels to dig on the dynamics. But did you find any contradictions between these findings, between investigating with the different lenses? And I noted down on my question because you reflected on it, but you said, do models predict wrong? I don't want the answer on methodological contradictions or models incompatibility with each other, but more on the empirical, when you unveil these dynamics with different lenses. Did you see contradictory findings?
I think so far, so I'm really speaking out of where we are right now. At least one thing that we can see is that in contradiction to what the models more positively see as a potential future, that is, for example, not being reflected in the analysis that's going on in the MLP. That's much more negative. So we do see the lock-ins, but we do not see a lot of potential for breaking them, actually. And if you go to the tie between socio-technical analysis and initiatives, the socio-technical analysis has this more or less innovation theory-based view that you have this new entrepreneurs coming on, changing things, and bringing in the innovations and eventually bring up a new regime and new landscape or whatever. And what we really find in some of the domains that we looked at is it's the incumbents that are really introducing the novelties. So, for example, that would be a contradictory finding.
I think that will help a lot the field develop exactly these contradictions.
I guess so.